Okay. Right, I think I've had me 10 seconds.
Yeah, good to go.
Formally, good morning, everyone. I'm Councillor Gordon Wheeler, Chairman of this committee. I'd like to welcome all of you to the virtual meeting of the committee this morning, which is being held remotely. Apologies for the delay in setting up the live streaming. I know there's an awful lot of people working their socks off behind the scenes to make this happen, and I thank you to them that we're now in a position to welcome our listeners to live streaming viewers. Sorry. For the benefit of the viewers of the live stream, I've now asked the clerk to the committee, Noel McManaman, to list members and officers present at the virtual meeting today. Noel, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks everyone for your forbearance this morning. We're now ready to go. The other committee members that we have here today are Councillors Andrew Brown, Richard Butler, Errol Henry, Stephen Garner, John Longdon, David Martin, Sheila Place and Liz Plant. And as well as myself, we have the following officers present today. From the Police Department, we have Mick Allen, Group Manager, Rachel Fowler, Team Manager, and I'm afraid with all the shenanigans, I can't check whether Martin is with us. Yes, Martin Carnafton is with us. Good. And from via East Midlands attendees, we have Suzanne Hayden, Andrew Berry, and Ian Patchett. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Noel. Now, because we're running a bit late this morning, I know one or two members have another meeting to go to, so if they drop out before we finish, it's not that because they are not interested in proceedings, they really are. But unfortunately, it just clashes with the later meeting. So apologies in advance to those listening in. That if we lose one or two members, that is the reason why. Thank you. Members, can I now accept the minutes as a true of the last meeting on 23rd of September as a true and accurate record, please?
Yep.
If anyone doesn't agree, can you either raise your virtual hand if you have one, or the actual hand in the absence of a virtual hand? Thank you. None, so I take it as that's all agreed. Apologies for absent. I turn again to Noel, please. Noel.
Yes, Chair, we have received apologies from Councillor Yvonne Woodhead for medical reasons, and we have Councillor Sheila Place substituting for her today. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel, and a warm welcome to you, Sheila. Declarations of interest. I'll read them both out. Do any of the members present here have any disclosable pecuniary interest to declare, and do any members present have any private interests, pecuniary or non-pecuniary, to declare? Again, in the absence of a hand or virtual hand, I take it, which I haven't, which I can't see, I'm taking that as no. Okay. Thank you. Agenda item 4. So recommendations from Highway Asset Management Review. I'm going to, at this point, hand over to Martin, who I believe is with us this morning, to introduce the report, and then to Andrew Berry of East Midlands to provide a brief presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a report that reprises the conversation that we had on the 23rd of September, where members requested further updates about the claims recovery service which Osha supply for VIA on behalf of Notts County Council. And the recommendations contained in the report arise from the deliberations of the committee on the 23rd. So I'll introduce Andy Berry to present on Osha recoveries. If you could leave any questions till the end, and I'm sure he'll be very happy to take them then. Thank you very much, Chair.
Members have also asked Martin as to whether they can have a copy of the presentations today. I know to save resources and obviously very challenging times, that will be sent out electronically. But if anyone wants a paper copy, I'm sure they can ask for them.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that happens immediately following this meeting.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Is that all right with you, Liz?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Martin. I'm going to try and share the document. Is everyone able to see that?
That's good, Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Good morning, everybody. So this is an update on the highway damage cost recovery. I'm going to run to a quick overview reminder of what we do and why we do it, and then an update on the results we've achieved so far and the ongoing developments that we've now developed on the system. So a quick overview of what we do. So Nottinghamshire County Council owns the highways and the operational assets, and under the Highways Act are entitled to recover the costs arising from highway asset damage. And that's been delegated through to VIA under the services contract you have with us, and that's been in place since our formation in July 2016. We have incident response teams and a support structure in place for our rapid response for any damage to the highway, and that's usually over a two-stage. We go and initially make safe, and then we carry out the restorative repairs as required, which could be some time after the initial make safe, depending on what's been damaged. So to quickly look at our historic approach and why we changed, we originally assigned costs that we incurred to an incident through our accounting records, and it was very reliant on the accuracy of bookings and timesheets and the processing system, and there was always a potential for a time delay, and we not necessarily recover all the costs that were associated to a claim. We also had the difficulty that insurance companies are notoriously hard to deal with. They are exceptionally professional at not paying. We found they were requiring copies of absolutely everything, and when you provided everything, they wanted more, a bit like Hydra's heads, and it became a war of attrition. And from when we started this process up through to December 2017, we had settled about £60,000 during that time period. So moving quickly on to Osha, we moved to Osha. We deployed, originally they were called Artemis Recoveries, and we've worked with them since December 2017. They act as a kind of reverse loss adjuster for VIA. They are a team of handpicked professionals from the insurance industry and also civil engineering, which makes them sort of really good at understanding the civil engineering process, but importantly, the insurance process. So they're able to discuss with insurance companies in the kind of common language, if you like, and reach an agreement on our behalf. So the new approach we adopted was to create an industry standard schedule of rates. Now, the rates we set up were reflective of the full internal costs and provide us with a standard recovery rate. They include a contribution to our administration overheads and business overheads, but it's important to emphasise they don't contain any profit at all. It's just a cost recovery. They cover the minimum call out we have for over set periods and fully inclusive of all our plant and incidentals that we use. And what that does, it reduces the internal processing and costing times we have, and it improves our accuracy and consistency. So we're recovering all the costs that are associated to each claim. And a schedule of rates we know is in use within the Highways Authority, with many Highways Authorities, including Highways England contractors. So when we've got a claim, we hand over the negotiation to Osha Recoveries to secure the best settlement for us on every claim. And once that's done, they're usually paid within 30 days. We have continued to work with Osha and develop this process. We've continually amended our internal procedures and improved our data recording at the time of incidents, because that becomes quite paramount, having the right photographs and the right evidence of what we've done. And we've evolved the structure of our claims and continued to improve the methods of evidence capture that we have. The Osha fees that we pay for their services, we build into the rates, so they don't come out of the costs that we have, and they're on a phased percentage, so they are incentivized, and that fee is between 10 and 15%. As I say, it's built into the recovery rates. So moving on to the results, an update of the results we've achieved. The 33 months to September 2020, which is the time period from December 2017 when we started this, we have had 1,565 settlements, totaling £2.2 million of gross recovery. That splits down to £1.9 million of net recovery after fees since we've been using this process. In terms of the targets we set OSHA, that improved their target or exceeded their target over that time period by £400,000. So to provide the sort of context and the update from the last update we did, the first 12 months, we had 612 settlements and recovered a net 430k. We've continued to develop and improve that. And over the next 21 months, we have secured a further 953 settlements, covering a net £1.5 million, which we have been, say, incredibly pleased with, and it continues to improve. Still with OSHA, we have 184 claims, which have a potential for a net recovery of another 423k. And I would emphasise again, the fees we pay to OSHA are built into our schedule line items. So I've said we continue to develop this process. So what happens where we reach an impasse with an insurance company where OSHA say we have followed everything we can do and we've reached the point we can't process any further? We've now developed this in 2020, and the process we've adopted is we review with NCC, our client, for any reputational damage for any claims that we would like to take legal action on. And assuming they're okay, we then have a legal deed raised through NCC that enables us to take court action in our name. Obviously, we have to go through that process because the asset belongs to NCC. So in theory, it would be NCC that has to take its own action. But we are happy to do that on behalf of NCC. So we have a contract in place with a solicitors called Ward Hadaway Solicitors. We went through a process of identifying a solicitor who are absolute highway specialists, and Ward Hadaway had an incredible track record of success. So we went with them. They review every claim that we submit to them for viability before accepting. So if we reach an impasse, they will not just say, yeah, we'll do that. They verify that they are happy and content from a legal perspective. We have all the paperwork in place, all the documentation we need, and they are confident that they can win on our behalf. And then they proceed, and we try and recover the costs where possible. So this is a relatively new development in 2020. To date, we have 66 claims in process. They've either already had the deed raised and been forwarded to Ward Hadaway or are in the process of being done, but they total £174,000, which will be with Ward Hadaway. And to date, they have won the first 7 cases with no cases lost. So we're very hopeful that that will become a very positive way as well, and we'll build on the success we've achieved with OSHA. That's the very brief overview, and ends the slideshow.
Thank you, Andrew. Martin, do you want questions at this point, or do you want to wait till a bit further on?
If we could have questions at this point, really, because all I've got after this is to really present the recommendations. So if members have any questions, I think that would be a time to do it.
Thank you, Martin. David.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question really fixates around grip boxes, because when cars have collisions on the streets or wherever they are, they often write them off, and unless they're on the asset management list and that's kept up to date, they don't get replaced. So over the last couple of years, I think I've found 4 that have been missing or written off, and it's only inadvertently by canvassing that comments have come from residents, and they've said, we used to have a grip box there, but a car slid down the hill, wrote it off, and they've not been replaced. So could we make sure that we do a bit of a historical back check on that? Because when they are written off, the minuscule amount it costs in comparison to what you're talking about with the rest of the highways asset management that gets hit and damaged by cars on a regular basis is quite a small area. So it seems to get lost in the way, but actually that really impacts on the residents locally.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Martin. What I will do is if you could let me know what those locations were, and I will find out what had happened. Normally what should occur is VIA will undertake a pre-filling of the grip bins prior to the winter maintenance season. So issues of that sort should have been discovered in advance. So if you could let me know what those locations were, I'll find out what happened.
Yeah, well, actually, because residents have said, we used to have a grit box there, where's it gone? And I said, well, what happened to it? And they'll say, well, it got hit by a car and it's never been put back. It's been removed by the clean-up team, but then it gets lost in the history of in the ether, so to speak. You know, and it's quite important for the residents, otherwise the grit box wouldn't have been there in the first place.
Right.
Yeah, but if you let
Yeah,
Martin
like I
know
say, I've already
of where the locations are, we can track that back.
Yeah, I have reported them, but obviously we need to keep up to speed on the asset management of the grit boxes.
Oh, very much so.
On an
Absolutely.
annual basis, really, yeah.
And of course, the same applies to any other members in the meeting this morning have any similar issues. Yeah, please, again, let Martin know. Sorry, Martin, maybe some work coming your way, but yeah, I think you'd rather know than not know, so that these issues can be addressed before the onset of what could be a severe winter, according to the experts. We'll wait and see on that one.
I only raise it, Chair, because often small collisions like that don't get reported. They're not, you know, it's where somebody clips the curb and smashes it into a grit box, writes it off, and they come back and clean it up. And if it's not picked up by the team that's filling them up on the rounds through changing staff or, you know, whatever, I don't know what the check system is for it. That's what I'm saying.
We may have an answer coming your way anyway, because I've got Suzanne first and then Gary after that. So Suzanne, if you'd like to come in, please.
Yes, I was just going to say, obviously where the collision is reported to the police and we've got all of the evidence then or information, then we may well pick that sort of thing up. Where it's just a bump and it's not reported, then we're unaware. So if you could feed that through your district manager as soon as you become aware, then that's something that they can get onto before the season starts, or anything, you know, not just grip bins. If you can go through your district manager, make them aware, then they can follow that up internally.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, district manager rather than Martin's probably is an easier route. Then Martin can liaise if necessary with the district manager. Thank you, Suzanne, much appreciated. Gary, sorry, you want to come back, Martin?
Yeah,
Okay,
I am using that route. What I'm saying is that really those assets should be picked up by the people who are restocking the bins, because if they're missing, they should be on the list, and if they're not there, they're not there.
Yeah, you're getting nods of agreement from Suzanne, so that's fine. Thank you, David. Gary, is your hand still up? It's gone up and it's gone down. It's gone up. It's gone down.
Yeah, it's still up. So just on that point, what we'll do is we'll check in with Via, because what happens is Kevin Heathcote's team go out overnight during the winter when they're not gritting to make sure the grit bins are stocked and filled. We'll just make sure the point that Councillor Martin has made, a well-made point, make sure that they're checking that the grit bins are actually still there, and if they're not, to report that and make sure they get replaced. So we'll just double check that process.
That's excellent. Thanks, Gary. That's really helpful. Thank you. Councillor Andrew Brown and Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was just a follow up from what Councillor Martin said. I mean, we've had several bins where cars have been in collision with them, and our district managers have managed to get them replaced quite quickly. However, one of the issues that we did find in the area that I represent is several of the bins get emptied by residents using it for their own driveways. And I got the parish council to put this out in the local parish magazine in various areas to ask people to stop doing that, and also to get the parish council to regularly, check and report them. So we've keep a bit of an inventory like that. It might be worthwhile. I don't know anything we can do to stop residents pinching the stuff, but it does happen.
So a while back, Andy, if I remember correctly, it was mooted that perhaps you can introduce some sort of dye into this, but I think that was ruled out for presumably because it would stain. I'm not sure, but I think that was unfortunately there was no go on that particular one. It is sad when people help themselves. I can remember having
this conversation a couple of years ago as well, very similar in this committee.
Yeah, that's right, Andy. You do indeed. But yeah, it is unfortunate that people help themselves when you can go to your DIYs, B&Q or something equivalent, and buy your own. But there you are. That's sad.
Parish councils are a good tool to keep an eye on these things.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Andy. There's one question I've got my own. Martin, you mentioned earlier on. Sorry, it wasn't Andrew. It was Andrew. You mentioned the figures early on that of the amount recovered by our solicitors was 12,000 in 7 cases. That seems a rather low amount for 7 cases. So it strikes me, why is someone fighting this for what in effect is a rather somewhat tiny amount of money when altogether there's 174,000 outstanding.
Hello, Councillor Wheeler. The reason we have to pursue that process, the average claim is between 1,000 and 2,000 for the ones that have been recovered there. When Osha do their negotiations, they have to know that there is a legal route we will follow. If we don't follow the legal route and we effectively back down and allow a non-settlement, or an insurance company can say we're not playing ball and we don't follow it legally, the danger is they build that in and then decide they can offer much lower prices or not play ball, and it affects the overall success we have through Osha. So we have to pursue this to make sure that we do try and recover the right amount, and we try and recover the cost where we can of doing that. But the process is to make sure that the insurance companies know we are serious about recovering the damages, so they are more cooperative with Osha at the front end.
I perfectly understand that. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Thank you. Councillor Stephen Garland. Stephen.
Thank you, Chairman. What do we do about uninsured drivers? You know, the uninsured, they knock a lamppost down, and do we chase it up, or just say, well, we can't get no money, so we just leave it? I mean, what do we do? Is he, you know?
Hello, Councillor Garner. There is a process that we can adopt where there is a fund we can apply for uninsured drivers, and it depends on, I suppose, the damage they've caused and what we're able to secure on that regard, and whether it becomes unrecoverable. If we can't identify a driver, then it's unrecoverable. If it's an uninsured driver, there is a route we can go to try and recover that through this fund.
Okay. You happy with that, Stephen? Thank you. Yep, see the thumbs up. Thank you very much. I don't think there's any other questions coming your way. No, I think that's probably it. Okay, in that case, I've formally moved the recommendations included on page 8 agenda back, which in itself refers to paragraphs 5, 6, and 7. Do I have a seconder, please? Are you, Councillor Longden? John, thank you very much, John. Much appreciated. Do you want to say anything, John, or are you just seconding it? I'll take you to just seconding it. Okay, thank you, John. Well, thank you for that. Right, in that case, is there, do you want to sum up, Martin, since we've actually, sorry, I beg your pardon. Is anyone in favour, or is anyone not in favour? Could you indicate? Or, sorry, no? Chair, David, sorry, David, your hand up. You're muted. Sorry, David, we need to hear you. You're mute. Right. Yeah.
We're talking about item 6 on.
Yeah, we're still in the same agenda, right? Item 4. Agenda item 4. The recommendations are contained on page 8.
I'll bring your attention to item 6.
Oh, really. Can we?
Okay, so I'm not in any way wanting to be. I've always wanted to be constructive on this committee, and I think it's a very important committee because the remit of the Communities in Place Committee is quite large, and so it really needed this to supplement it. But and it's an important area to identify problems in order to find solutions. So I welcome the report, especially paragraph 6 on page 2, and it's crucial that as a council we've got a strategic approach that seeks to optimise the allocation of resources for the management and operation, preservation and enhancement of the highway infrastructure to meet the needs of current future users across the transport network. But the way that VIA communicates sometimes leaves a lot to be desired, and it can be poor, to say the least, at times. Ashfield Independent members had an urgent summit meeting on the 13th of October, which Martin attended along with the area manager and district manager. And the meeting was in response to the terrible micro asphalting jobs undertaken by subcontractors on behalf of VIA. It's extremely difficult when residents are expecting their road to be resurfaced, and we know why we use micro asphalt. because it's a cheaper version and it sustains.
David, I think you're straying the territory outside of the recommendations contained in the report. Now,
Yeah, well,
if you have an issue, which you clearly have an issue with microasphalting, and I'm not in any way trying to discourage you from speaking out on the issues, I think we need to have the discussion outside of this particular meeting through Suzanne's present this morning. So I think that's the route we need to follow. Now, it's not really well, I don't think it is at all, actually, within the recommendations contained in the report. Now, if you don't agree with the recommendation of the report, by all means, of course, that's your prerogative and you can say so. But we have what we have in front of us and we need to really stick with that. And I know you're always constructive, David. I know that. And I welcome your constructiveness through these meetings. I think we're going to digress here and outside the territory of what's in front of us this morning. Sorry,
Yeah.
David, that sounds harsh.
Well, can I just make the one point then, right? Because we have to be clearly communicating with residents when we're doing these jobs, because they don't come to the officers and they don't come to the council. The first people on the front line that get the stick when everything goes out the pram is us. That's the problem. But in Ashfield particularly, we have a very active MP who supports the residents straight away, and we're the ones that get the blame for it.
I understand exactly what you're saying. Now, what VI have put in place is regular meetings with district managers and councillors. I know I had my meeting very recently with Laura, district manager for my neck of the woods, which is extremely constructive. You are right. You are right to a certain extent. Communication needs to be improved, and I know when we had a pre-meeting on this one, Doug Coots of VI is aware of that, and I think they are working actively. I'm not defending anyone here. I'm just simply telling you as it is on the tin can. We could do things better, absolutely. And when we're going to do a piece of work, we need to tell residents. I need to tell residents what they're doing. And in fact, I've got some works in my division coming up on the 8th of December by doing a letter drop today and tomorrow to advise residents accordingly, because I asked them to. That's the sort of dialogue we need. I'm not saying they wouldn't have done it without me asking, but they are doing it, which is really good news.
Yeah, all I'm saying is, as a builder, you're only as good as your last job, right? And you have to tell the neighbours what you're doing, and that's what I'm asking for. And when they come along and they do something like that, and it's not as good as, we know why they're using micro asphalt, because it's a cheaper version and it sustains the life of non-classified roads. I understand all that, but when they make a bad job like they have, the checks and balances we need to be at the top of our game, because it's the worst thing in the world.
Right. I'll bring Suzanne and Gary in, and Liz, I haven't forgotten about you, but perhaps what Suzanne and Gary have to say might help you in that. I'll bring you back. I won't forget you about you, Liz. Honestly, I won't. Suzanne.
I was just going to try and reassure Councillor Martin that we have got a process in place where residents should get a letter informing them of what they are going to receive and why. And we also are working on some video explainers just so that they can actually see what it looks like when it goes down and what it will look like in 6 months' time. It's great that you have the full understanding of asset management and you can get that over to your residents, but it's helping councillors to do that. And putting it as simply as possible so that they can relate to their residents as easily as possible. Where we do get problems, we do follow them up, and occasionally, for whatever reason, things don't work, but they are rectified. So please be reassured that we are there to work with you.
Can I suggest, David, while we've actually got Suzanne now, immediately after this meeting, if there's any issues which you feel need to be firmed down on, perhaps you can have a conversation with Suzanne.
I think the other, if I may, Chair, just been announced we're in Tier 3, by the way.
All right, thank you.
The other thing is as well is the checking of the methodology of the works after. We have to be on top of our game, because our residents step outside their door on a terrace street like Russell Street in Sutton and look straight at what's been done. And if I'm not going to catalogue it on here because it's
No, please don't. No.
I'm not going to, but we have to be on top of our game, especially when we're doing something like micro asphalting, because it's not a resurfacing job which people perceive it to be, and it's we know it's a short-term fix, and that's what it's about. So all I'm asking for is that we follow the process and we manage the contractors as best as we possibly can, just like you would if you were having a job done at your house.
Right, David. And Suzanne's nodding. She's heard you, and she will pick it up with you. Gary, can I bring you in? Then I will go to Liz.
Yeah, really, just to follow up from Suzanne in the sense that the obviously the county council and the client for highways are very mindful of the comments that Councillor Martin has made, and to some extent that's reflected in the report in paragraph 6, the 2 bullet points there. I think it's recognised that things aren't perfect and that it's an ongoing process and a learning process. I think one of the things in terms of the direction of travel that the county council has made over the past 4 years is that we have started to tackle the estate roads more than previously, and obviously inherent in doing that there's a lot more people looking at it, and it's right outside their front door, and so it is more of a challenge in terms of communications, but it's something, like Suzanne said, that we're keen to develop and work on and work with members to get it right. Thank you.
Liz. Sorry, Councillor Liz Blanc. Liz, sorry I kept you waiting.
No, that's fine. It is really obviously on the similar issue. I mean, I certainly welcome obviously this communication with the public, because as David says, it is crucial. There's no doubt about it. And I'm not going to go into details, but sometimes when say a road in my division, it has been resurfaced, but only to a certain point, and I get questions, and why haven't you got any? Why haven't you gone any further than that? So we can only improve on those communications, I think, with the public, and also to some extent, I suppose, with councillors. And I also have had a very good meeting with Laura, and I found that really helpful. And I think that's a really good thing to be doing going forward. I was just wondering, in terms of the communications with the public, whether we could sort of build in some some of these things are not going to be done until June 21 or March. I was wondering if we could perhaps look at it 6 months down the line and see whether we can see that this area has improved. We sort of review what's been put in place. And the other thing is, I just wanted to say I'm really pleased to see paragraph 7, where it says overall condition, maximise the overall condition of Nottinghamshire's highway network rather than following a worst first approach, which I think is definitely should be welcomed. And again, on the next point, a proactive rather than a reactive highway maintenance strategy as much as the budget allows. I mean, I'm really pleased to see those statements in the report, and obviously look to them to be making a difference and to be acted on. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Suzanne, do you want to come back in again, or is your hand still up from previous? You're muted, Suzanne. She's taking her hand down, so I assume you're okay now. Thank you. Thanks, Suzanne. John, were you second? Is your hand still up from what you seconded earlier on, or you want to come in with something, John?
I want to come in with something. It's on recommendations. I was supporting everything that has been said.
Thank you.
About Osha getting some more money back, which we need desperately. But the question I have is actually on recommendations. It's paragraph 5 on first page. If I can ask it at this stage.
I will let you on this occasion, John, even though we've gone beyond that point, but go on. Yeah, okay.
I guess we had, but you're getting in front of it somehow. Anyway, so what it is, I've got a local stakeholder meeting coming up shortly. And one of the questions will be, no doubt, the lot involved will be on the cycleway maintenance and things. The question is quite simple. Is there any plans for more investment in cycleways? That's the question.
Outside of the recommendations contained within this, but the answer to your question will be yes. But the detail of which perhaps we can get back to you with an answer on later on, John.
If somebody can send me some info, that'd be nice.
Of course, absolutely. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
I'll arrange that.
Thank you, Gary.
Wheeler and Councillor Longden. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Councillor Stephen Garland, Andy Brandt, you're after that one, okay, Andy? Hello, Stephen.
It's going back to the micro asphalting. When we send a letter back say that we're doing it in the area, do we put you may get tar on your shoes? Be careful going in your properties, because I've had people who's had it done. They've walked across the road and walked into the house and got tar on the carpets and stuff. So, you know, I just wondered if we put things like that in the protocol letter.
Thank you, Stephen. Before I come to you, Andrew, perhaps Gary's wanting to answer that question. Gary?
I'm 85% sure that we do, Councillor Garner, but we will check and doubly make sure.
That's excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for your question as well. Councillor Andy Brown. Andy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just going back to what Councillor Martin was saying and one or two others, including Councillor Plant, regarding communications with the local officers. I understand that not everybody's got parish councils. I've got 13 of them, and what I've done in several at their annual parish meetings is invite both a police officer and also our highways officer along to take questions that from the public, and it always works well. So the highways officer, to hear it from from the horse's mouth, as to speak, and it goes down well with the public, and it stops people like ourselves getting a lot of well, I wouldn't say flack, but a lot of unnecessary questions, and it might be something that other councillors might want to take up as well. It works well.
Thank you, but that could be for the moment, of course, organised virtually, I'm sure. That's and I saw Councillor Plant was nodding while you were speaking on that.
And it's great that our officers take time to come out in the evenings and visit, local village halls and take questions from the public, and it also helps ourselves as well. They can answer questions we can't.
No, we're very grateful for officers putting themselves out in the evenings. Sorry, Liz, you want to come back?
I was just nodding, Gordon, because I said to Andrew, give us one of your parish councils. He's got so many.
He's got 30.
We have none.
I don't have any either. I don't have any. Right, folks, I'm going to come back in that case to the recommendations. Sorry, we've gone rather around the houses on this one a bit, which on recommendation on page 8, which touches on paragraphs 5, 6, and 7. I know one or two of you have got some concerns, but hopefully those can be addressed outside the recommendation in front of you. So unless anyone objects to the recommendation or wishes to abstain, I'm taking it that you're happy to endorse these. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Lots of nods. Thank you for your very, very positive contributions. Greatly appreciated this morning. Thank you.
That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything you want to say, Martin, by way of summing up, or are you happy for us to move on now? Still there. You may have lost Martin. That's Martin. That's the officer I'm talking about.
Happy for you to move on.
Sorry? Happy to move on. Thank you, Martin. Much appreciated. Thank you. Okay. In that case, we move to agenda item 5, which is the Waste Private Finance Initiative Contract Midterm Review Introductory Report. I think I'm going to start off handing over to Mick Allen. Is that correct, Mick?
It is, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just very briefly introduce the report. The report sets out the proposed scope of the mid-term review of the Council's PFI waste contract with Veolia. There is only one recommendation. It's on page 6, which is that members consider the report and the draft review that's attached to Appendix A and identify no areas for further investigation. Myself and my colleague Rachel Fowler are going to do you a very brief presentation just to set some of the scene for that, and then obviously at the end of that we're happy to take questions, observations, etc. So just as I try and load this thing onto the screen and share it with you, fingers crossed. It'll be on its way any second. Sorry, the IT is incredibly slow today, isn't it, unfortunately?
Yeah, I think that, as you know, there have been problems. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not getting the sharing box this time, but there we go. Here we go. Very slowly get there. Just for the members that don't know me, I'm Mick Allen, as Gordon said, and I'm the Group Manager for Place Commissioning in the Place Department. I look after a number of commission services, including country parks and other things, waste, energy, etc. This is particularly around the waste PFI contract, which I've been involved with for the biggest part of 20 years now, which is a long time, could somebody just give me the nod that that's actually appeared on your screens now?
Yes, that's good to go. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So very quickly then, running through this, we've got various people that do things around waste in the county, and it's really important that various people that do things around the county. Districts and boroughs, as I'm sure you all know, are waste collection authorities. The 7 of those across the county, they're responsible for collecting waste at the curbside, as well as dealing with fly tipping, street cleansing, littering, etc. The city deal with collection and disposal as part of their unitary authority status. Under the Environmental Protection Act, we obviously work with those district councils from a collection side as waste disposal authority. Our job at county level is to reprocess that waste, deal with treatment and disposal as necessary, and also we've got a statutory duty to provide recycling centres. In order to deliver that statutory duty, we have a long-term PFI, private finance initiative contract with a company called Veolia, a French-based multinational, one of the biggest companies in waste in the world, if not the biggest now. They deal with all of our waste disposal, treatment and recycling, apart from a few bits that were there before. Such as Eastcroft, which is the energy from waste plant along London Road in Nottingham there, which is subject to a historic contract that we've got a joint one with the City Council. Medical waste, known as clinical waste usually, we deal with a few hundred tonnes of that every year, and we make the arrangements for that separately. And glass, which isn't part of our contract with Veolia, because the districts manage glass collections in terms of the material and the stuff that they get through the bring sites themselves. Generally, there's a revenue generated through that, so it was useful for the districts to maintain that and retain that for their own purposes. That relationship as well, probably worth just saying, is managed through a thing called the Joint Waste Management Committee, which is a joint committee with ourselves and 7 districts and boroughs. Basically portfolio holder or committee chair plus chief officer plus the City Council at that same level, excuse me, plus colleagues at Veolia, and that Joint Waste Management Committee meets quarterly to oversee all those joint arrangements to make sure that we're all saying the same thing and hopefully working together in a positive way. The contract currently has a number of facilities that are provided by Veolia for us. They've got 12 recycling centres, hopefully soon to be 13 recycling centres. As members will know, we've got approval to develop a new site for Cotgrave. Across those 12 sites, 4 of them have community repaint schemes on them, so people can take paint where it's sorted, graded, and then available to collect free of charge for members of the public and community groups. The intention is to include one of those paint reuse schemes in the Cotgrave site as well. Unfortunately, because of COVID, that scheme's currently suspended because unfortunately they're in small cabins on the sites. But obviously, as the world returns to normal, hopefully next year we'll be able to continue those and expand those services. We've got 5 waste transfer stations across the county. They're basically big sheds where the district councils deliver waste into, where it can be bulked up and transported on for treatment or disposal. They're distributed across the county to minimise transport for the district councils and have allowed the districts to deliver some significant savings in terms of having less damage to vehicles from not going on landfill, but also just being able to go to local delivery points. The main contract facility at the moment is the Mansfield Material Recovery Facility. A number of members may have been to Mansfield in the past. It's where all the dry recycling from the county, from all the districts goes, where the materials are separated through mechanical and manual means, baled up into bales of single source material and then sent on for reprocessing. Some in the UK, some in Northern Europe, some bits still go further afield, particularly the fibre, paper and card goes worldwide at the moment. We've actually got now subcontracting green waste composting through another Veolia subsidiary, a company called Veolia Oxton. and that's a site that was previously known as Simpro. Some of you may know it, on the side of the A6097. They take all of the green waste generally from the recycling centres and from the curbside collections that the districts have done. And we also subcontract energy recovery. So because of the long drawn out history of this around a failure to secure planning permission for a facility that was proposed at the former Rufford Colliery at Rainworth, we now subcontract energy recovery to a site in Sheffield, which is a Veolia one, Veolia Sheffield ERF, which is right in the city centre, and the Scottish and Southern Electric plant, which is now known as Ferrybridge Multifuel 2, which is just alongside the A1 M62 near Castleford, and that both those sites treat residual waste to by thermal treatment to create electricity for the grid, and Sheffield as well provides district heating into Sheffield city centre to heat various parts of the Sheffield city centre. We've got some just pictures just so you know what things look like, and you may recognise the gentleman in the middle there with his tie on. This is a Newark Recycling Centre. This is Newark Recycling Centre, the last site that we opened, which was 2011. Split level site, which is a similar sort of design to the thing that we're planning out at Cotgrave. These are waste transfer stations. Top two pictures are Newark. The bottom left is really just to illustrate that in most circumstances they are just large sheds where people can deliver waste into, and we can bulk it up. But as I say, it does provide convenient locations for the districts to manage that waste effectively and minimise their travel distances. The site on the bottom right there is the site at Kirkby in Ashfield. That one provides waste up to the Ferrybridge plant, and in order to feed that plant, it has to be pre-processed. So that site's basically got a large shredder in it where waste shredded up and put into containers to go up to the Ferrybridge site because of their input specification. These are quick pictures of the MRF up at Mansfield, the material recovery facility. It can handle up to 85,000 tonnes of waste a year, say from all of the districts. You can see on some of those pictures the sort of conveyors, etc., that run round, and obviously how the waste bulked up. There is a video of the operation of the site online, and we'll share the link through to that. I would have put it in the presentation, but I was nervous of the ability of the system to run the link into a useful video, but we will share that link. The site does have an educational facility within it, which can be used as a meeting room, and obviously we always welcome committee to come up and use that meeting room for a meeting when we're away from the virtual world. We have used it in the past for finance major contracts, and I think Communities in Place have been there as well in the past, and it's useful to see the site in operation, and you can hopefully, I say, when the world is more normal, have a guided tour of the plant as well. I'm just going to hand over to Rachel, and she'll take you through some of the more detailed stuff. Rachel's the Waste Strategy and Development Manager in my waste team and knows a lot more about the detail of it.
Good morning. Yeah, so also through the contract, we do a lot of educational work with residents. We have a joint communications plan with Veolia. The key priorities for our sort of campaigns that we run are to improve performance in recycling, improve the quality and reduce waste overall. On the screen, there's just a couple of examples of educational material that we've provided. So we do sort of leftover recipe cards to look at food waste. We'd have every year we run the Reduce, Reuse, Recycling Fund, which makes available funding for residents and community groups and schools to access up to £1,000 for any sort of schemes they're running that look to reduce, reuse or recycle waste. Obviously we have the community repaint, as Mick mentioned, that's currently postponed at the moment, but we do have an appointment system normally at the 4 sites which allows paint to be redistributed to people that want or need it. We do sort of competitions, so we've recently run a Halloween recycling word search. The good thing with these competitions is that we often attach a resident survey for people to enter, which allows us to gather data and inform any sort of future campaigns looking forward. We obviously get asked a lot of questions about what happens to our waste. So we've recently pulled together some frequently asked questions which are available on our website, and we've created assets for social media to that sort of give that information, and done a few journeys of certain recyclables that we collect. So you can see there it's quite small, but the journey of a milk bottle, and it sort of shows the process once it's collected from a household, where it goes and where it ends up, just sort of giving that positive information to residents that you know, it is good to recycle. You may all this may look familiar to you all. It's the Are You Bin Smart? This is all done in conjunction with the districts. So it's just a leaflet that tends to go out to all residents, just detailing what can be put in your recycling bin at home. Just to say that all of our communications are branded as Recycle for Nottinghamshire, rather than sort of individual logos, which allows all the districts and boroughs to use that information as well. So just some figures through the contract. Over 410,000 tonnes of local authority collected waste from 365,000 households, which is constantly growing. It's probably changed again in the last few minutes. 80% of material collected at recycling centres is currently recycled, and it has been consistently for the past few years, and we consistently get high public satisfaction from the recycling centres at about 98%. We also perform really well with diversion from landfill, with less than 5% of the material collected going to landfill in 1920. That tends to be material that can't actually go to energy recovery. We're performing really well on that. Recycling rate about 43%. This has been a bit stagnant over the last few years. It is in line with national rates as well, but obviously, excuse me, we're always working to improve that. Another good thing Nottinghamshire has is that we do have a consistent set of materials that all district and boroughs collect at the curbside with regards to the dry recycling. And obviously the contract, Mick's already mentioned, provides local infrastructure for the waste collection authorities, which has allowed them to deliver their services more efficiently. Just a quick look at the sort of individual WCA performance. As mentioned, we all collect the same sort of dry recycling of paper, card, tins, cans, aerosols, plastic bottles, yogurt pots and margarine tubs. All 7 collect garden waste for a charge, and 3 currently collect glass at the curbside. I know Mansfield were due to start collecting glass at the curbside this year, but that's been put back to start in April 2021, and the County Council actually has supported that that rollout of the glass financially. There's a table there just showing the last 3 years of individual performance of each of the areas. As well, as you can see, there's quite a range ranging from sort of 50% performance down to 25, with most sort of performing mid to late 30s. So looking at sort of the national aspirations of government and sort of the proposals that have come out recently, we welcomed the Resources and Waste Strategy for England in 2018. Some key sort of proposals coming out of that to try and drive recycling performance are looking at sort of a core set of materials collected for recycling. At the moment, the materials proposed, the only difference we would have to make in Nottinghamshire would be to include all sort of plastic trays and plastic tubs, although at the moment it's not clear how government are expecting us to collect these, whether they'd have to be separate or we can continue co-mingled. They also have a proposal for separate weekly food waste collection. They have spoken about free garden waste collection, and then they're looking at deposit return schemes and extended producer responsibility for packaging. So going back to sort of the recommendation of the report and what the report's about, obviously the report outlines what Veolia have submitted in their midterm contract review, but just looking at why we're doing it, obviously just spoken about the National Resources and Waste Strategy, which is obviously some legislation may be driving us to change and try and improve performance. But we also thought, we're halfway through the contract. It's a long contract, times have changed. So it'd be prudent just to have a look at sort of any areas of performance. The flatline recycling and composting rate is obviously a bit of a concern, and definitely, is worth reviewing. Another key problem for us in our service is the sort of quality of the material that is arriving at our MRF, the dry recycling. We are having rising contamination in that. I think we're averaging at about 12% of material being contamination in the dry recycling against a contractual target of 5%. So it's definitely one of the key concerns for us as a service. There's also increased environmental awareness from the public who are wanting to recycle more, and the sort of national news reporting on that, and sort of subsequent COVID-19 impacts. So people's working practices have changed. A lot more people are at home. That's changed the sort of makeup of the waste that we are collecting. We're noticing we are collecting a lot more tonnage, and the composition of that waste is changing slightly. So as mentioned, the report outlines sort of a summary of Veolia's midterm review, which is attached to the report as Appendix A. I think the key areas for consideration for this committee would probably be to looking at improving the recycling performance, so looking at the targeted material we currently find in the residual bin. I think there's latest research we've done, it looks at about 20% of material that currently is found in the residual bin could be put into the recycling bin or be recycled. As mentioned, the 12% contamination in the dry recyclable, so we could do with swapping those items and materials over. Obviously, anything that comes out, any changes that come out of sort of this review will have an effect on the Waste Collection Authority. So there'd have to be discussions there in sort of the collecting methods and methodology. Green waste collections, and obviously the recycling centre network, looking at, as Mick mentioned earlier, sort of including the community RePaint scheme on any sort of new sites that we look to develop in the future. Continue with public engagement and support, and obviously bearing in mind with any changes that we take forward, the sort of legislation and proposals that are coming out of central government through the resources and waste strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you. Mick, do you want to add anything more, or are we happy to go straight to questions at this stage?
No, I think obviously, waste is a complex business. It is a multifunctional area across ourselves as a county, across the districts, but also across the public. And public actions are fundamental in delivering change. The national strategy is quite clear. It sets some really aspirational things that they'd like us to do, but actually at the moment what they haven't done is set aside specifically money to do some of those things. What's probably worth pulling out of that whole presentation is that the extended producer responsibility stuff, which is basically around making the manufacturers and the retailers pick up more of the bill for the amount of packaging and waste that they produce, making sure that where that packaging is not recyclable or not readily recyclable, they're paying more towards the cost of treating that. So it is very much around joining up the front end of manufacturing, retail, etc., all the way through into the waste industry, with local authorities of various sorts sat in the middle. So it's an interesting time to be in waste. Trying to pick your way through some of this is quite difficult as well, I'll be honest, but we really want to engage with members obviously of this committee and other members as well, in order to understand what your key priorities are and what your perception as representatives of the communities are as well, because I think that's the key thing for us to take out of this today if we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm assuming your comment is interesting time to be in waste, not meant to be literally, Mick.
Well, I don't know. I think sometimes, Gordon, it is, but there you go.
Councillor Stephen Garner.
Thanks, Chairman. Well, that was a load of rubbish. No, joking. No.
I knew you'd say that.
What does concern me, and it concerns a lot of people throughout Britain, I believe, is we give all this waste to Veolia, and it somehow, I'm not saying Veolia do it, but somehow it lands up in the third world countries, floating around the oceans and things like that. Is there any way we can say to Veolia, look, we've got businesses in England to take your plastics, to take your plastic bottles, to take your whatever, and let's use them rather than shipping it all around the world. I mean, it lands up in an island in Indonesia and places like that.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor
Garner.
I'll pick that one up, Rachel, for starters. I think because one of the beauties of working with a company of the scale and professionalism of Veolia is that we can guarantee that none of our waste ends up in the oceans. The reality is that we have a duty of care process, which is a statutory process that we follow to track all of our waste wherever it goes. Veolia are one of the few companies in the waste industry who do have UK-based reprocessing facilities. Plastics, particularly, they have a couple of sites down south where the plastics are reprocessed in the UK. Some of the other bits do go into northern France, I think, and into some of the northern European markets. So the only thing that does go any further now is what's known as fibre, which is in effect paper and card, and that can go worldwide because the demand for cardboard and processing for paper is there. But certainly the beauty of the operation here and having a reputable contractor on board, but also the very strict legislative way that waste is managed in the UK. And I'll be honest, we do have rogue operators. There are rogue operators out there. There always are in industries of any sort, and there is money in waste as well. But certainly from a duty of care perspective, we're very comfortable with Veolia and what Veolia do for us, and that is one of the great advantages of the contractual arrangements we have in place.
Thank you, Mick. Is that all for your comfort, David? Stephen, sorry.
Well, yes. I obviously, I expected answers like this, but we're looking at developing things in Nottinghamshire. And take the highways, we're wanting tar for the micro asphalting. These plastics and that should be going to local firms to create tar to come back to Mansfield, come back to county council to deliver back on the in our county as tarmac and different things. And I asked this question a couple of years ago. I remember it, and
I do as well.
What we're doing to try and recycle locally and get our stuff used back to the Nottinghamshire people. That's. I know it's difficult. Don't get me wrong. I'm not naive. It is a difficult thing, but I just wondered if we asking these questions to try and get things like this done. Thank you,
Nick.
Yeah, I think it's in everyone's interest to minimise the mileage that waste travels. I think that we all accept that. The problem we have, I guess, is that and one of the things for council going probably know that if you know some earth up at Forest Down next to it, there's Vale windows, and Vale windows obviously use lots of plastics to do windows. But actually, that way there is we don't have the processing capacity to make that waste into a product here locally and neither do they. So actually, you'll probably find that some of the product that they use is coming in from the Veolia processing plants down in Essex or wherever. But because of the scale and the technology that's used on these things, obviously it's something that you can't do locally. They don't just chip it; they go through a very complex process to clean it all up before it's reusable. So you're absolutely right. The more we could use locally, and reuse is one of the key things for us in terms of trying to minimise waste. We don't want the waste produced in the first place. If people buy less, use less, reuse things, that's perfect for us, because actually that minimises the cost both financially for us operationally, but also for the environment. The more that stuff can be reused in the first instance, that's better. But actually the reality of the waste world is very much around we are talking about quite big technological solutions in a lot of ways for things, and that does require stuff to almost be sent away to come back where it does. So it isn't a case of chuck it over the fence, although that would be quite handy. It's not clearly it's not a deliverable one within the waste industry. But you're right, absolutely. The more reusable products and reused products and recycled products that we can use across all of our operations as an organisation will be beneficial.
Thank you, Stephen. Rachel, I saw you nodding away ferociously. Do you want to add to anything that Mick said?
No, I think Mick's covered everything. Just to re-emphasise that actually, we do try and follow the waste hierarchy, which has sort of reduce, reuse, recycle. So yeah, we are always looking to reduce the amount of waste out there.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Longden, John.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, I'm going to go back to my being born. I'm a died in the war baby boomer. No, but I was born in 46. No doubt some of them are before. We didn't call it recycling. We used to call it use it up. But as the country got wealthier, we seem to have create more and more rubbish for recycling. I totally agree with recycling. It's something my late wife, my brothers do even today, practice as normality. But what does concern me, the main theme, is food waste. That's always concerned me greatly. When you come from a time of severe rationing, it was more severe when I was growing up after the war, because of the Low Countries and what have you, with their agricultural systems broken down. So it's always been a deep concern. Or we always had some waste, say, from schools, restaurants, and that all went for them days into Pixville. But my concern is household food waste. I've got a feeling we need to have some sort of educational system to educate people, not to purchase more than they need, not to waste food. I mean, today it's so cheap, so available, and so varied. You don't go to the food shop with a ration book in your hand. They are my memories, and they are memories that stayed with me today. They are lessons learned, as simple as that. I'm well pleased that with Viola, they've got to page 26. There's an item here called Love Food, Hate Waste, campaign launched by the Waste and Resource Action Programme. And I have to totally agree with that. I think we all have to give our full support on that issue where food waste is. So hopefully, I like to see less and less people having less for food waste. But just remember, the time I come from, when your dinner was put in front of you, you liked it because that's all there was. And just observations, Chair, might bring some questions from other members.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
There's some very serious messages there, and I really appreciate your comments on that one, John. Thank you. Rachel, I know you obviously want to come back on that one. Do you, Rachel?
Yes, I was just going to say, in response to Councillor Longden, food waste, reducing that is always a key part of our educational campaign, and as you've pointed out, we do support the Love Food Hate Waste campaigns. We do a number of sort of use your leftover recipe cards, but we also try and publicise the fact that you can freeze foods that people didn't know you could freeze, portion control, all sorts of elements like that to try and reduce that as well. So yeah, we understand that is key to do.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Rachel, as well. Liz, you had your hand up, it's gone, so to speak. Have you taken your hand down? I'm trying to work the order.
No.
Okay, your virtual hand disappeared from my screen, but it's back. Well, you're back anyway.
Yeah. Yes. So certainly thank the officers for the report and obviously the presentation. And I fully agree with what Mick has said in terms of this is an extremely complex issue. There's no doubt about it. I think, and the waste contract is, I think, a really important contract, not least because it lasts for 26 years. I don't know whether that's the norm in terms of length of contract, but that seems in the northern length of time to me. And also the cost, was it 28.5 million annually? That's a lot of money. But I also think, obviously, the waste contract is also so much part of the environment. And I just think that a contract that, when we sort of set this contract up 15 years ago, the world even then was, as regards the environment, quite a different place. And we have moved on considerably since then, obviously in terms of the climate emergency and sort of what we are doing to address that. So I just wonder whether, if the contract is reflecting the changes that have come, and the changes that have obviously happened since it was set up, and the things that we will need to do going forward, obviously in terms of the carbon, carbon emissions, and obviously the reducing, then getting to carbon neutral by 2050 is the government target. And I know we haven't got a target as a council, but many councils have, and hopefully we will address that in the future. In terms of the report itself, it is worrying that the recycling rates have basically stagnated, in fact slightly gone back. And obviously that in terms of a unitary authority, I think this would be one instance where it would be better if we were one, because obviously it's the districts doing the collection and we have the responsibility for getting rid of it. And I don't think that actually helps. But that's, it's no good going on. That's an argument for another time. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned, obviously, that money in terms of education and recycling is less because we've had 10 years of austerity. Although in the presentation, you obviously showed a fair, a good amount of educational material. I wonder how far that gets out and who it gets out to. I mean, I'm an ex-primary school head teacher, and obviously, 20 odd years ago, we were doing work with the children in the classrooms. And I remember doing a lot of work on aluminium in those days, but we were certainly, so often the children know far more than the parents. Because I used, if we had parents' evening, parents would come and say, well, my daughter says you can't do that, and we can't do that because Miss Plant says so, etc. So you can, working with children is certainly a good way to get the message over. But I'm just wondering in terms of, and of course, you're saying that the contract was agreed 5% contamination. Now the contamination is higher. So presumably you're looking to change that 5% to raise it. But that seems to me, if I've understood this properly, the wrong way of doing it. What we want to do is to eliminate the contamination at the point of the householder, obviously. So, I'm concerned that that the scope of the review isn't perhaps looking far enough ahead in terms of the changes we have to make to ensure that we really are doing our bit for obviously for climate change. And I'd like to know, in terms of this contract, is the sort of paragraph 50, the last paragraph where it says, paragraph 35, sorry, bear with me.
Okay.
What are we going to do? If obviously we pulled out of this contract, we would lose the £2 million from the PFI support of the whatever, but could potentially offer greater flexibility for the future. And that's the important sentence for me. This is what we want. We want greater flexibility for the future because things are changing and we've got to change with them. So I'm just querying in terms of whether this contract really is going to provide the flexibility that we need to address these issues going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. There's lots of very interesting questions, and it's £2 million per annum, of course, to come out of it. Yeah. Rachel, do you want to take the first bit about education, because that's what you put up on screen. And I've got to make after that. You're muted, Rachel. It's okay, it's my trick as well.
It's okay. Councillor Plant's right. schools and school children are key, and actually pre-COVID, we used to get hundreds of school children through the materials recovery facility who used to come in. They used to have an educational session and then a tour of the MRF and then go away with materials, and we used to get fantastic feedback from that. And actually, Veolia used to fund the sort of buses that that would bring the children to allow schools from all over the county to attend. Obviously, that's postponed at the moment, but going forward, we hope to pick that up when we're allowed to. We do provide a number of online material and assets for schools to use as well, to go into sort of the education and for teachers to use in their classrooms. So I agree, education is key. How we utilize the other things to get out to residents. We do a lot of social media, and I understand that not everybody is on social media, but we do tend to get a lot of sort of conversations going that way. We liaise with all the districts, so the districts and boroughs are sent all the sort of educational assets as well for them to utilise how they want. Through previous pots of funding, we've funded the sort of Are You Bin Smart leaflets to go out with council tax letters, so that they've gone to all households in the county as well. So education and getting the material out there is difficult, and it's sometimes difficult to measure how it's reached, but we do use a number of different avenues on that.
Thank you, Rachel. Mick, do you want to pick up the other aspects of the contract with Veolia?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I guess you're absolutely right. It's a long contract, and it's a lot of money every year in terms of the contract. The reason for the length of the contract is very much around the fact that we needed to move from a very landfill-based solution back in the early 2000s to a much more sustainable model, and that's costs a lot of money in capital investment. And we, as a county council, couldn't do that at the time because of legislation, but we also couldn't afford it either. So back in the early 2000s, we were relying around 75% landfill for our waste disposal. Recycling was down at 5%-ish. So we've got to remember that over that period, we have moved significantly. Landfill is now less than 5% a year. Recycling's up at mid-40s, and it is in line with the national averages, that, although it would be nice to do more, and we want to do more, obviously. In terms of the cost of that, clearly, again, the reason for the length of time was because Veolia invested £40–50 million worth of capital into the county, and we have to pay that back over the length of the contract. So to make the whole thing affordable, that's the reason for the length of time. But Nottinghamshire still generally is in the bottom 20% of counties of waste disposal authorities in terms of spend on waste disposal. So we perform very well in terms of our costs for waste disposal for any number of reasons, both the arrangement with Veolia, but also historic arrangements for Eastcroft and other things. So we are very cost effective as a county council on that. That move away from landfill clearly is a driver in terms of the overall sustainability and the climate impacts of what we do, because not only is methane incredibly damaging to the environment, methane is produced in massive quantities out of landfills, and even if you do capture methane, as a lot of modern landfills do, a lot of our landfills in and around the county were old. Most of them obviously have now been closed. I think we've gone from 6 or 7, 8 landfills back in the early 2000s down to, in effect, one now, operational one, which is Staples Quarry. And we use very little of that. We send our waste elsewhere generally because it goes through Veolia contracts. But again, even when it goes to landfill, it doesn't always go to landfill because it could be that it's materials used elsewhere within the landfills. It's just the way that the reporting through the government waste data flow system doesn't allow us to secondary process things. It doesn't allow us to capture things that aren't disposed of in a particular way, because that's just the way the reporting works, unfortunately, because our figures would be significantly better if we could capture some of the things that we do post processing, but we can't. But overall, obviously, you're right, and particularly that 5% contamination that's now 12% is a frustration for us. We don't want to change the contract if we can help it. We spent a lot of time trying to clean up the material, doing the educational stuff and working with Veolia. But it is important to bear in mind that with the sort of tightening of legislation around waste and contamination levels and the sad things called the Transfrontier Shipment Regulations, which we need to comply with in order to move waste even out of the UK, even before Brexit or whatever, but we do, and that requires us to have incredibly good standards of material. So things like if you get food waste or a nappy or whatever in any sort of recycling, that is really difficult to deal with through the reprocessing. So we spend a lot of our time trying to deal with those sort of minimising organic waste into the recycling. Our preferred solution would absolutely to be able to produce waste at the curbside that was 5% or less contamination. That would be the perfect scenario, because that would mean that the plant operated effectively. We were producing good quality recyclers, but that's proving very difficult, and the contamination has increased steadily over the last 10 years or so. Clearly, somewhat linked to austerity, but also linked to public attitudes, and it's interesting that clearly the public are very keen on recycling and the environment, but a very small percentage of people can create quite a large percentage of problem, if that makes sense, because of their inability or unwillingness to follow the rules where possible, and in effect sometimes just not understand them, and that's the effort we have to do, and it's a challenge. It's always a challenge for us.
I know, Liz, I was speaking to Mick at the pre-meeting to address some of your concerns. And Mick is in constant dialogue and regular dialogue with Viola. We are looking, we being the Nottinghamshire County Council, are always looking to way things could be done better and to improve the way Viola do things better as well. We are on a contract. I think a lot of criticism is directed at Viola possibly from those who don't understand the operation of Viola. I'm not saying you, Liz, I'm talking generally, you know what I'm coming from here. But I hope what Mick has said and Rachel has said this morning offers comfort that we as a council are doing what we can. You're right to touch on about having districts collect the waste and we have to dispose of it. It is an issue for us to address. The education, perhaps something, Rachel, perhaps you could look at more with in consultation with the districts who, after all, collect the bins. So any additional material which we could put out through that route would also help. So perhaps I can leave that thought with you, Rachel, on that. But thank you, and thank you, Mick, and thank you, Liz. But move on, there's quite a few speakers still to come. I think, David, you're the next one. Councillor David Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have several questions. I don't know if you want to take them all together or one at a time. I don't know. That's up to you.
Tell you what. Let's let Mick and Rachel absorb all the questions and perhaps come back to you at the end of them all. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously, as the Cabinet Member for Environment at Ashfield, it's quite a complex subject. I'm also on the Joint Waste Management Committee as well. So it's an interesting time. And of course, we're recycling 36% of our waste. It's the second highest in the county, including Nottingham City, and 47% of our household waste, which is the highest in the county, actually. But this is still not good enough, and we are always trying harder. And next week, our bin calendars are going out, and we to over 125,000 houses to ensure that residents know what bin to put out and when. Residents are already clearing spaces in the front of the fridges ready for Christmas. We've also improved our website through our extensive digital transformation strategy to ensure that residents can help avoid contamination, because this is a real issue. And I think the crux of the matter here is twinned with the 5% ratio set by Veolia. It's not that the contamination is caused by people putting the wrong things in. It's because they're over recycling. So they're in like Tetra Packs and other such items that you currently don't allow, so that the contamination rate is distorted by the fact that a certain element of the public are over recycling. So what also didn't help, and it's regrettable, that the government removed the arbitrary recycling targets in 2015. So I've got to admit, Mr. Chairman, that when I read the word, I had to Google it. Deleteriously. it means causing harm or damage on a continuous basis. But, you know, it's true to say that removal of the recycling targets has had a deleterious impact on the recycling and directly led to the progressional plateauing, as this report suggests, because the government aren't driving it anymore, if that makes sense. You know, we're happy to recycle at that level, and that there doesn't seem to be the impetus behind it anymore. And what could we do as an authority to lobby the government to reintroduce recycling targets and reduce the cost that impacts on increased landfill or recycling? With regards to contamination, we still try our best, and like I've already alluded to, it's a lot of people over recycle, and that's the problem. So Tetra Packs and stuff like that, they find stuff in there in the lorries that could be recycled, and also as well the market are putting the little circular arrow symbols on their packaging that say this product can be recycled, and then when it comes to Veolia's inspection, it can't. So we're in a bit of a crux there. So industry-wide on packaging would have an impact on that, as well as education through the digital transformation and through the bin smart leaflets that we send out. So a midterm review would be helpful if we could actually extend the range of some of the stuff that we can actually recycle. That would have an impact on the 12% deficit that we've got currently. So in the appendix, garden waste, right? So we've got the cheapest garden waste collection service in the county, and it's £28 a year for the first bin and £14 for the additional. The problem is, however, that many of our poorest simply don't want to pay the extra, and they don't see why they should have to pay for this, and it's led to various problems, and that increased fly tipping, and that's why we've increased our schemes with bag it campaigns and skipping to summer. In fact, we've just been shortlisted for a nomination for APPS award later this year at Ashfield because of the continuous side waste collections that we make, which has an impact on fly tipping. And I often say to people, fly tippers in Ashfield can't be from Ashfield because we've got too many bins and too many schemes going on, and generally they're from outside coming in, and it's quite strange. So the report says that you're going to consider funding free garden waste collections across Nottingham. I'd like an expansion on how you intend to do this, and if that's still going to go ahead, because that obviously is a cost for the district council as an income. So back to the appendix as well. I'm also interested in the small traders services trial mentioned in the appendix. The report states that micro or small businesses make up 90% of the business in our county, and we've had complaints from many retail business and traders that the amount of rubbish they generate doesn't warrant a commercial trade waste contract. So that's another problem, because the amount of waste that they generate doesn't warrant a commercial contract. So where do they get rid of it? Because they're all, you know, especially in this year where we've had COVID and people have been struggling for money anyway. So I think that could do with a review, that trade waste contract. And we appreciate the trial, but the small traders at the contract transfer station in Newark has been paused due to COVID-19. So what were the interim results of that trial, and will it be restarted? So going back to places like Vale Windows, from the window industry perspective, when I first started in the window industry, 80% of the PVC was virgin and 20% was recycled. Now it's the other way around. 20% of the PVC used in a new window is virgin and 80% is recycled. So they've got that well sorted, and actually it costs less to produce the PVC windows, whereas before it used to cost less to produce the glass. Now it costs more to produce the glass because it requires a heat element to fabricate it. So it's gone quite the other way around. So that industry is on the flip side, if you know what I mean. So 80% of it's recycled now, whereas it used to be 20%. And now the heating element that's used in the manufacturing process of producing glass costs more, but they recycle glass more as well, as we do in Ashfield. So I think that's about it, really.
Right, thank you, David. There's a lot of questions there. Mixed relieved. That's the end of your questions. No, I'm only kidding. We want questions. That's what we have this committee, is for you to ask questions, even if you are banging the drum for Ashfield. But we'll forgive you for that one, David.
Well, I've got contract. I mean, I'm in charge of that environment team, so I'm
kidding. I'm kidding. Honestly, I'm kidding. Right, Mick.
Yeah, do you want me to pick that up then, Chair?
What becomes, obviously, as the paper will say, as you in front of you, see the government has aspirations for an awful lot of stuff. We talked about it as the pre-meeting, but obviously it's a question of whether the money is going to be forthcoming for this. But I'll leave that for the time being. I'll bring Mick back in here. Mick, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, no problem with that. No, some very valid points in that, to be honest. I can't argue. I guess I'd pick up on some of the key things around recycling targets and lobbying government to do that as part of the work that we did to respond to the consultation on the resources and waste strategy in 2000. Well, we did it in 2019, obviously, rather than 2018 because it came out in December. But we put forward. As part of that, our response was very much that statutory targets were required in order to drive performance, both to district level and a county level. Yeah, it's really difficult when you have to make investment decisions and operational decisions around budgets to prioritise waste and recycling when you have other things that are more important as organisations. So we think the statutory targets were important. We fed that back through that consultation. Government have still, in effect, decided that they won't be imposing statutory targets. I think at this stage, although again, only a few first bits of the resource and waste strategy are currently going through the House in part of the Environment Bill. That thing around the green waste and free green waste county-wide, it's not us that are proposing that, it is the government that's proposing to have free green waste everywhere. That was their original plan. I think the reality is through the lobbying from districts and boroughs who do make money out of having a chargeable green waste service, the government is currently backing away from that proposal because of the amount of money that would be lost. And I know I can't remember what the group was, Rachel, you maybe remember, but the group that the districts are part of did lobby the government to withdraw the potential for free green waste collections because of that fact that they make a surplus on a lot of those services. Obviously, if the government give us the money or give the district money, people will be happy to do it. But if there's a surplus currently being generated, that's a difficult challenge for the waste collection authorities down the line. In terms of small business waste and traders, again, it's quite a tricky one. We never actually started the trial at Newark because it was due to start in beginning of April, and obviously the world stopped just before that was due to happen. So we're due to run that trial again as soon as the world returns to some normality. But that is very much aimed at, I guess, sort of job in builder type work rather than people who would normally have a trade waste collection. And the reality is it's a difficult one because the legislation says that if you're a commercial operator, if you run a business, you should have a trade waste collection. You're not allowed to dispose of that waste through household collections. So very much that's around, again, looking at how at a district level, because all of the districts and boroughs operate their own or commissioned trade waste services, I think with the exception of Rushcliffe, who I think the city do the Rushcliffe area now. There's ways and means that you can target those businesses either by using domestic containers rather than trade waste containers, doing less frequent collections, etc., in order to try and make those cost effective for them. And I don't want to bang the unitary status drum because I don't think it's appropriate for us to do that as officers, but waste is clearly an area where there is a little bit of conflict sometimes between income generation and service at a district level, and clearly that's something that we've tried to align by some of the charges that we impose for disposal. We in effect subsidise trade waste recycling services through the charges that are levied for disposal. to make recycling services that you offer to customers, or a district can offer to a customer, at a lower rate, because we in fact offset some of the costs one against the other to make that more attractive. But it is a challenge, and obviously once we've got the results of that trial at Newark, hopefully that'll come forward. The last thing I'd say, I've written down a few things, I may have missed some, but the last thing was just around the 5% comment and the fact that people do over recycle, and there is a mix of that. There are some people that recycle things that are outside of the specification, which does impact on contamination. There are a lot more people who recycle the wrong things simply because they do, and because they don't care that much, I think. But it is a balance of the two. But the reality is, by widening the specification, we may be able to improve some of that and reduce that contamination rate. But as Rachel said, the recommendations coming out of that resource and waste strategy wasn't significant in terms of the change to the input specification to what we use, as against what they're recommending as a national requirement. The national requirement is incorporating some additional pots and tubs and trays, and obviously we need to look at how that impacted, if that does become law, how that impacts on the operation of the MRF and the material and in effect the machinery that we use to promote that and work that and deliver it. But I will make a point about the 5% contamination figure. It's not Veolia's figure. It was negotiated. It was agreed between ourselves at the county and Veolia, and particularly all of the districts, through a joint arrangement that we had in place at the time the contract was procured. So everybody had the opportunity to have that discussion about whether 5% was an appropriate level at the time. And it was felt to be appropriate. It's proved challenging to do, but we were at or around 5% for the first 3 or 4 years of the contract, and that only dropped away as resources have reduced. So the 5%, yes, it is a Veolia contractual requirement because it's backed into the contract, but it wasn't just a figure, an arbitrary figure that Veolia threw in and we agreed, because that's not how it was done. But you're right, this is a challenging area, and obviously the Joint Waste Management Committee will be having some of these same discussions as well. I think the meeting in January will be taking, unfortunately David, you'll be listening to some of the same stuff, I guess, from us again, but it'd be useful to have that discussion with all of the district councils and borough councils around the table, so we can try and flesh out some of these issues in the round, because again, as you can see from the figures, there's significant variances in performance across the county, as there are also significant differences in approach in terms of priorities as well. So it'll be interesting to take us forward through that route.
David, if we have time, I'll bring you back, but I've got other speakers as well. We've only got 20 minutes left before I have to bring the curtain down on this meeting. I'm not ignoring David. I never do. You know I don't do that.
I know, it was only about the number of recycling centres, because it's been reduced down to a net loss of 4. Does Veolia think that the chairman of Communities in Place should put one back in Ashfield and Mansfield?
Well, we could take that question away, but yeah, I thought you'd ask that somehow. But thank you, David.
Thank you.
I would apologies, Richard. I'm going to bring Andrew in next, Richard Butler, because I know Andrew's got another meeting coming up, so I'll bring him in before you, Richard. So apologies for that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got an education meeting starting in 20 minutes. Yeah, I've looking at this report, and on page 32, it's great to know that our recycling centres accept fridges and freezers. However, I've recently been trying to dispose of a freezer, quite a large freezer, which is too big to fit in the boot of a car. I made inquiries by my local scrap collector, and he wants £40 to collect it. And I don't really want to let him take it away, because I have visions of it ending up in a ditch somewhere in the borough of Rushcliffe. As you see, many fridges and freezers tipped all over the place. And it's good to know Rushcliffe fly tipping team are on top of this. Wouldn't it be a better idea if Rushcliffe were able to, or other districts could collect these fridges and freezers? They'll collect things up to a settee, but on inquiry, they won't collect a freezer. I'm prepared to pay for them to collect it. Even if I had a trailer and could get it to the tip, most tips don't allow you to take a trailer in unless you've got a permit. So stuck in between the devil and the deep blue sea here. I just wondered what the officers think about expanding the idea to include fridges and freezers to be collected from homes to save our verges and ditches.
Thank you, Andrew. You may have an answer though, Mick, or perhaps you haven't got an answer on it.
Well, I haven't really got an answer, because obviously the arrangements that the district councils put in place and borough councils for their bulky waste collection is down to them. We arrange the disposal, so in effect, if they collect it, we dispose of that, and we dispose of that free of charge anyway. So it's just a case of getting it to us. I do know that some of them do put limits on, and bizarrely, I have an old dead American fridge freezer in my garage as well, which does at some point need disposing of, and that's too large for the bulky waste collection at my district. And I'm absolutely same as you, Councillor Brown. Those inquiries of private sector disposal companies either illicit charge or a lack of confidence in their ability to do the job safely and appropriately. If you do appoint somebody, though, to be honest, get somebody private sector, that's fine. But yeah, in fact, they should have a waste carrier's license, and they should have the appropriate duty of care paperwork. So we can satisfy ourselves as professionals that paperwork's there, and therefore they dispose of it appropriately. But I think, in reality, lobbying the districts and the boroughs is.
Yeah, well, I was say, can't we have the conversation with the districts to include fridge freezers? If they can collect a settee, I'm sure that, or a three-piece suite, a freezer should be included in that list.
Yeah, I think most of them do. I may just you're in Rushcliffe, aren't you? I guess.
Yeah.
Rushcliffe probably just have a different policy, but
I've made inquiries.
But it's £18 for a fridge freezer to be collected in Ashfield.
Okay.
From Ashfield, and they can come all the way to the south of the county.
Perhaps part of the process, Mick, because I know you're always involved in discussions with the district levels. Maybe as a takeaway point from this meeting today, we can ask the question.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
there is a danger, because it's in Rushcliffe's interest as well, as Councillor Brown, Andy has just said. Last thing we want is for Andy's freezer or anyone's freezer to end up in the roadside somewhere. So we'll
take that back. We'll pick that up.
That's appreciated. Is that right, Andy?
Colleagues at Rushcliffe, yeah, no, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Much appreciated. Thank you.
We'll feedback on that one.
I know you've got to shoot off to the meeting, Andy. So anytime you're ready, that's absolutely fine. And thank you very much indeed. Richard, Councillor Richard Butler. Richard, sorry to keep you waiting. Richard.
No, I'm here. No, it's okay. I indicated after Andy anyway, so no harm done.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, I mean, waste truly is fascinating. I mean, some of you will recall that in a previous incarnation of this council, I was sort of quite high profile, and I did indeed talk a lot of rubbish, quite literally, and the photograph proved that we did quite a lot in the way of new facilities at the time, and looking at the contract, I know time goes quickly, but I can't believe we're halfway through it. I mean, I remember all the debates and everything that were taking place in the mid 2000s, and it was the Liz's group was in control in those days, and they led the way on it. And I remember we were all embraced it quite enthusiastically, the contract, and here we are halfway through. And I think, generally speaking, it does work well. There's, like anything, there's always room for improvement, and I suppose hindsight's a very wonderful thing to have. But that's life, isn't it? Now, a couple of questions though, and which I think colleagues will be familiar with, and we have had before. And the first one is contamination, the contamination issue of the recyclables. It might sound minor, but one of the biggest complaints that we get, certainly in Rushcliffe, and I assume other districts as well, is that you can put your water bottles and your plastic bottles in your blue bin or your recycling bin, but there is still this issue of the tops, the bottle tops, and I'm sure whether Veolia can or have any mind to do anything about this to get the necessary kit in to be able to deal with that. I don't know if we're still talking to them. So that's just a little bugbear of the current situation. And also another question about the contamination is I mean, Mick spoke about things like nappies or whatever going in the wrong bins, which is completely just unacceptable. It shouldn't happen. But are we still struggling with the wrong sort of plastic You know, the certain types of food containers and the wrong colour of food containers. I think there was an issue that you can't have black containers still, food tray things. So if that is still a situation, do you think there is any light at the end of the tunnel there to try and resolve that particular situation? But as I say, generally speaking, it all seems to work quite well. One little word I can't help resist coming back to Councillor Martin on his request for the communities of the committee, the chairman of the communities committee for a new recycling centre in Ashfield. Well, look at your list. Look at your list on page 32 on the yellow pages. You've already got 2 household recycling centres in Ashfield and Rushcliffe, and every other district's got 2 apart from Gedling and Rushcliffe. So you know, it's not all bad up in Ashfield. Come on, and that's why we're under pressure to find a new one in Rushcliffe, because it's plainly not working, having just one in West Bridgeford. But that's really, I'm just digressing slightly there. So really the question is the few little niggling problems about contamination. Is there anything that we might be able to do about that further? And also, finally, just to add support to what Councillor Longdon said, pointed out about the Love Food Hate Waste campaign. I remember in my days, as when I was the chairman and the cabinet member, we did take that very seriously, and it was an important issue now, and also it's increasingly important now, of course. But there we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, just briefly, I know one thing to. I think I mentioned to Rachel in our pre-meeting is paint. I'm glad to see that under the new recycling centre in Cochrane, that there will be a facility for paint. It worries me the amount of people put empty paint cans into the grey bin, which is probably exacerbating the existing problem anyway. So I'm delighted to hear something's going to be something.
Yeah, that's actually. Thanks for mentioning that. I forgot to pick up on the point. The paint site was introduced, I guess, about I don't know, 10 years or so ago now, and I was surprised at just how popular it proved. It was a real lesson learnt, and that's another thing about Whole World of Waste. You're learning things all the time about it. I never thought it could be quite as fascinating as it is.
Mick, do you want to come back on Councillor Butler's Richard's question about certainly the plastic tops for a starter? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can do, but Rachel, you're probably better placed.
Oh, Rachel, sorry, Rachel.
Yeah, no, Rachel's probably better placed to answer it. I'll stay on the line, Rachel. Just you stay on the line,
Rachel. No, I was just going to say, one of the main reasons we ask people to remove the tops on bottles is it just ensures that the bottles are empty. So, for example, if you've got like a drinks bottle, if you can put the top in, it kind of just make you could put something in with liquid, which would then get squashed and then ruin recyclables. But also the machinery currently at the MRF, they're too small, so they just sort of slide through it and don't get sorted, and they wouldn't be separated for recycling. Hence why we just ask people to remove them.
Yeah,
you've got anything to add on that?
All I say, bottle tops are a bit of a nightmare, really, because they're made of various different polymer types and stuff. Yeah, the clear plastic bottles, the milk bottles, the water bottles are fine. Yeah, they're all a similar polymer type and could be processed. So, unfortunately, if you've got a mix of bottle tops, even if they were going into the plastic, they'd just be a contaminant that had to be removed down the line because you couldn't guarantee what they were. So that the message around removing is because it cleans up the waste. It allows them to be captured through the residual stream, and the residual stream doesn't go to landfill. It is generally, as we said before, it's either secondary reprocessed elsewhere and or then sent for energy recovery anyway. So it's not as though it's creating an environmental hazard as a result of that, but it is a really difficult one. And as Rachel said, the physical separation of bottle tops of an inch round piece of plastic is incredibly difficult to do mechanically, and if you can imagine trying to do that manually as well, Richard, I think that might keep you busy for many hours.
Well, Sarah's very kindly reminded me that Councillor Neil Clark collects blue bottle tops, so you all now know, and others, what to give them for Christmas. Okay, So there you are. He doesn't need to give you a Christmas list. You've got a Christmas list already made up for him. So please don't disappoint him. Give you all your blue bottle tops to Councillor Clark. He'll be very appreciative, I'm sure.
Well, just
don't tell him I said that, by the way.
Don't wrap them in foil wrapping paper.
Absolutely.
No.
David, I will bring you back one quickie because we still have one item on the report to go, plus all the recommendations, and then we'll be out of time. So very, very quick, please.
Oh, you talked to me?
Yeah, I am talking to you, Dave, because I did say I'll try to bring you back if I can very quickly, and I am
Another joint strategic thing is food waste. That's massive because obviously food waste contaminates the smell of the bin. You know, I encourage all my residents to buy a composting bin, and I think that's another promotional scheme. 90% of my food waste goes in my compost bin. With the lawn and grass cuttings, it rots massively, ever so quick, and it keeps the bins cleaner, stops them smelling. It's a lot more hygienic. That's something we really need to look at.
Yeah, can I quickly come back on that, Chair? Is that
okay? Please do, of course, Mick. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Rach. I think you're probably going to say the same. That we've been lobbying government quite strongly around this aspiration for weekly food waste collections everywhere, as much as anything, because we recognise the cost of that is horrendous at the district and borough council level. The tonnages of food waste, and we did a lot of work with colleagues at Ashfield 4 or 5 years ago, maybe more now, around the opportunities for food waste as part of some money that Eric Pickles was throwing around at the time. And actually the tonnage of food waste that's really generated from a curbside collection of weekly food waste is quite small. Therefore, the cost of collecting that in terms of running a vehicle around is horrendous and really very unsustainable in a number of ways. So we've always taken the view that absolutely, if you can, home compost suitable food waste, i.e. non-cooked food waste, sort of vegetable peelings and stuff, that's great. But we've always majored on the food hay waste and trying to minimise food waste. But at the moment, the government strategy is very clearly based around having weekly curbside food waste collections rolling out across the country from 2023 onwards. And I think they've been clear that we probably wouldn't be in that first tranche because, in Nottinghamshire, some of the more urban areas would probably work, but some of the rural ones are just going to be really difficult to do and not cost effective. But certainly the government strategy is very much based on that. And it's based on that for good reasons from a logistics and a logical perspective around, food waste is easy then to process through anaerobic digestion and help with the energy situation and energy security at the UK sort of level, but at a practical level locally, that is going to be a challenge for all of us actually. And we can find systems to manage the food waste relatively well through Veolia and through other systems, but at a collection level, that's going to be a real challenge, I think.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Mick, and thank you, Rachel, for a very, very helpful presentation, very detailed presentation, which I'm sure every single member listening in, and hopefully those who are kind of listening in or online as well, found very, very helpful and informative. So now, rather back to front, I apologize for this. I formally move the recommendation, which included page 14 of the agenda pack. Okay. And could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Butler. You beat you to it, John, this time. Thank you, Richard. Much appreciated indeed. So unless there's, anyone shows their hand, virtual or otherwise, I'm assuming that everyone's in favour of a recommendation in front of you. Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, Liz, do you have a comment, Liz? You're muted, Liz.
I think at this point we're going to abstain, Gordon.
That's okay. You're fine. You're abstaining, Liz, are you?
I am. I'm Sheila and Errol.
I don't know. They're not saying anything yet. So
can you see it?
Right. Yeah, Sheila's got a hand up as well. Okay.
Right.
Right. So yep. So is Errol as well. Okay.
Yes,
so
it's Errol.
The three of you are abstaining.
Yeah. We will be abstaining on that. I will be abstaining.
Okay. So just to be absolutely clear, as Councillor Plant, Councillor Henry, and Councillor Place are abstaining. Everyone else is in favour of the recommendation in front of you. Okay. Right. Well, thank you for that. Are you happy that? No, just double checking I haven't got anything wrong in the process.
Thanks for the clarification.
Right, thank you. Right, in that case, we move finally to the work programme, simply to introduce the item which is in front of you. If you've got any amendments to the work programme, any suggested amendments, happy to listen to those. If not, we'll move to your agreement, please, if you may. No one's indicated otherwise, so everyone seems to be happy with that. Okay, in fact, that's what we will do. So there's no need to vote on this one item anyway. What I would like to do finally is to thank you all very much for your contribution to the discussions this morning. Apologies once more that we lost just slightly over 20 minutes in starting this morning. Apologies to those who also have come in the live stream for keeping them waiting, and I thank them as well for all their patience. And of course, I may not see some of you, I'll see some of you virtually, but not all of you necessarily. Do try and have a lovely Christmas, best you can, despite the government putting us into tier 3 this morning. That's a decision I'm sure they made after a lot of thought, but we will see. But no, seriously, be safe, take care, and look after yourselves. Bye.
Thank you. Very good meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you to all the officers.